Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi all, good morning, good evening. Uh, this is Mahesh. Just wanted to check whether my audio is fine and you can see the screen as well. Okay. Are you able to see screen? All right, thank you. Okay. Now, uh, before we start, I just want to give a brief description about myself. I am Mahesh. I am an ETL testing project manager, primarily working for an CMM level 5 company as a test manager, working for a Australian-based private bank, and I have got around 13 years of experience into testing, primarily into ETL testing, and currently I'm managing a team of 42. I got 7 years of experience in training as well, and this is my uh, after a long gap we have again started the ETL testing classes. So before we start, right, I would like to understand the audience. Okay, so I'm having some four questionnaires. I would like you to answer those. Okay, so the first one goes this way. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, so I have posted the first question. All right. Okay, another 5 seconds before we close the poll. Good. Okay, so I see good number of answers. So the so I see that less than 57% of you are from non-IT background, and many of you are having less than 2 years of experience, or people are just starting their career. Okay, good, good enough. The second one is there's another question. Please try to answer this as well. Okay, all right. So 50% of you are already trained. Oh, is that so? Okay, and only 30% of you are not trained. All right. The last question is, so if that is the case, we would want to understand what is the expectation from this session. Okay. Okay. Another 10 seconds before we close this poll. Excellent. Okay. All right. So what I understand from this poll is there is a mixed bag of audience here. One, few of you are already having an experience, are already trained on ETL testing, and you are expecting some hands-on experience on ETL testing from this session. And few of you are yet to start your career, and as well as you are not trained on any of the tools. All right. So what I'll this poll helps me in understanding the audience, and I'll tune the course accordingly. All right. Now, so what is that we are going to deal today? So what is an ETL? So the screen is good enough, right? You're able to see it. I mean, the font is good enough, right? Okay. Now, in this business world, you see a lot of data coming from multiple systems, right? Let's take a simple example. Let's take a bank, okay, or a departmental store. So let's consider a bank. Bank has customers who are the ones who take the accounts, be it a savings account or credit cards or loans, mortgage loans, or multiple types of loans, okay, or it can be the vendors who are selling the machinery or the documents or the letters they are posting, right? So there are multiple type of information data that is flowing into the bank system. So it's like this. So I have an input data and output data, just like the general ledger balance, right? So when a lot of data is flowing into the bank system, that's where they started documenting it and using the papers. Now, what happens with papers? You have a pile of papers to look into the data. It became cumbersome and a tedious task to look into necessary data. So, what was the solution? The next level was the Excel sheets that were found. Now, prior to this, we had the general ledgers. Then the Excel sheets came. Now, Excel sheet had a limitation of some data. Now, that's where the need of database came into picture. Database, it's an or this helps in organizing the data into a structured way. All right, and a logical way. Now, say suppose how do we say structured or logical ways? A savings account guy customer may not buy or sell the letters that they will the letters that a bank will be sending, right? So joining a customer with the vendor doesn't have any sense. Whereas in the database, you will have these kinds of logic where you will find the difference between who is a customer and who is a vendor. Okay, so this way you will organize your data perfectly. Now, what happens when you have a large chunk of data with you? With banks, say suppose bank. So banks have an hierarchy as well, right? A bank, uh, a clerk, a manager, a sales manager. So you have multiple hierarchies in in the bank. Now each person would like to see the data in their own terms. They don't need the others information. Say suppose a clerk in the bank want to see how much has been deposited today, right? Whereas for a sales manager, he doesn't need how much has been deposited. For him, how many accounts are opened. That's his primary requirement, or that's what he wanted to see. Now, when there's a every data that is present in the bank database, the way one person is looking is different to the way other is looking, right? So you see the difference here. So the persons in the bank or the users in the bank have a different view to the data that is being deposited, that is being inputted into the database. So this is where you will have to create a view for each user, right? That's one thing. The second thing is whatever is the necessary information that has to be understood, simplified, has to be provided to the user. So I have a large set of data, but that is not what I would require. I would need it to be simplified and has to be shown in a way where it can be understood by the end user. So for a clerk, he want to see he want to see the sum of amount. But what does he have in the database? He got the individual transactions, right? So at the end of the day, he cannot go and sum it up on for himself. It is a tedious task for him again. If the system provides him a way where he can see the total sum, that will help him a lot, him or her. The same way for a sales manager, how many accounts are opened, the count will help him a lot, right? So such a system is obviously of much demand in the current environment. So what does it mean is a data needs to be converted into information, right? So this is where the databases are converted into data warehouses. Okay. Now the process of migrating the data from database to data warehouse is called as ETL, extract, transform, and load. So in the current in our example, so what is it happening? Uh, for from the clerk perspective, whatever are the deposits are extracted from the database. Transform means for the clerk, his the purpose of the data is he want to see the total amount that is collected from the bank in the bank. So that's where he's transforming the data into his desired format. And then loading is, so this sum of total deposits is loaded into another system that we call it as data warehouse. Okay, so this is a typical a simple example to showcase you what exactly a data warehouse is all about. Okay, now to summarize it, I'll show you a typical data ETL architecture. So if you see any what is a BI system. So we call the entire system as the BI system. So BI means business intelligence. So you have a lot of operation systems. Like for the bank, all the deposits or the account opening, we have multiple applications like ERP, CRM applications, HR to maintain the employee details, finance team, and others. So these are your operational systems. And there can be external systems like all you must be aware that banks or any companies will have third party supporters, right? Suppliers. So those data is not maintained in the typical in-house operation systems. They will have an external sources like file systems where the third party vendors will be keeping the data which in any format, maybe a spreadsheet or flat files or XMLs or legacy systems like mainframes. So what happens is all these are heterogeneous systems. So when I say heterogeneous systems, which means one system is different to the other. Say suppose Excel sheet is there and an XML file is there. Both are of different characteristics, right? Now, when you have to merge the data from these two different systems, it's not an easy task. You'll have to have some common buffer kind of system where, or an application where you move this data from the heterogeneous system into one common format, right? That's where the extraction logic comes into picture. Now, once you extract this heterogeneous data into one system, you then transform and then load into the data warehouse. So we say enterprise data warehouse because it's for a large set of data. So think about any bank. Say suppose you have Citibank. Citibank has some millions of customers. Now in a day, even a 10% of customers deposit the money in the customer, which is around 1 lakh. 1 lakh customers of information means 1 lakh rows, which is a huge set of data. So that's the reason when I copy or extract the data from such huge data set, you call it as enterprise data warehouse. Okay. Now from here, we the way we should look into, or the way the end user has to look into data, we have a presentation layer, which we call it as uh, the analytics or the reporting tools. So in the market, primarily BI is nothing but ETL plus reporting. Okay. So in the market, uh, when we say about ETL testing, it's more about extraction, transforming, and loading. So how do you test it? Whereas if it is of BI testing, it's a combination of both ETL and reporting. All right. So what is that you require as from the testing perspective? What is that we require to know about? So you need to understand the basics of database and its design. How is the database designed? Okay, and then you should understand how you will extract the data from this database. So how do you read or write a database, right, in a database? So that we generally we do using SQL. So we need to understand, or we need to know about what is an SQL. How do you write queries? Okay. The third is the knowledge about any of the ETL tool. So in market, we got multiple ETL tools. There are commercial tools and open source tools as well. So commercial tools include Informatica, Oracle Data Source, DS, and we got Data Stage. SSI is from Microsoft. Data Stage is from IBM, etc. Whereas in open source, we got Pervasive, and other tools. Okay. Now, any of the knowledge, any of the tool, if you have a knowledge, it would be easy for you to understand how the extraction, transformation, and loading is done. So, to look back in a different way, uh, any say suppose you got a web application. Okay, so web application will be developed using which language? A web application is developed using, yes. So it can be an HTML or Java or JavaScript, AngularJS, Bootstrap, CSS, etc. Right? Now, similar way, the ETL, what do you say, the extraction, transforming and loading is okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm sorry. Let me ask another question. So, what is the tool used for developing a web application? So, languages are multiple. So, what are the tools that are used for developing this web application or an environment? To say precisely, or environment. Notepad. Okay. You need Java JDK, right? Or for .NET, if it is, or if you are using .NET, you need a .NET application, right? So this same way, for even for ETL also, for ETL as well, you need an application or a tool to develop the ETL logic. So such tools are called as ETL tools, right? So these are the ETL tools that I'm talking about. Okay, there was a question here. So what are these tools? Why are they used? For that reason, I gave an explanation. Okay. So when you talk about black box testing and white box testing, from a web application perspective, what is a black box testing and what is a white box testing? Any answers? Okay, there's one answer. Good. Black box testing is conducted by the tester. Okay. Black box testing is done from the functional testing perspective. Okay. White box testing is done by developer. Okay, partially yes. Okay, so this is where I'll okay. The black box testing is more of what we see as an end user. So it's about the functionality. Okay, whereas white box testing is about how the logic or the code has been written. So if you look into the code that has been written by the developer and test it according to the requirement, that's called as white box testing. Whereas black box testing is whatever you see the front end of the requirement, the functional part of the requirement, that's called as black box testing. Same way in ETL also, when you extract a data, you test it using the SQL queries. You look into the data and you test it. Whereas white box testing is you go into the tool and look for the logic that is written to extract or transform or load. Okay, so to summarize, in order to do the white box testing, you need to have a knowledge about the tool, ETL tool. Okay, now these days people are not. If you might have heard about the concept of SDET. So what does SDET mean? Software Development Tester, right? So what does it mean is a person or a tester should have a knowledge about development concepts also or the development tool so that as and when there is a requirement, he will be ready to do the white box testing as well. Or he or she might have a complete understanding about the application. Okay. Gone are those days where a traditional tester is required. Now the new concept is SDET. So similarly, even in ETL testing, earlier the concept was to check whether the data was loaded correctly from source to target. that is from database to data warehouse. Now, slow and steadily, the job market has changed wherein people are asking for the knowledge about the tool, any of the ETL tool. So you need to understand the tool as well. All right. Now, this is about this. And next is the fourth what the other things that we need to learn from this training is the basics of Excel, VB scripting, VLOOKUPs, which means when you have to test the data that is migrated from source to target or from database to data warehouse, you need to compare the data, right? So for data comparison, you generally do using Excel sheet. So as the number of rows are high and the data complexity is more, you need to apply few logics. So that for that you require lookups and VB scripting knowledge. Okay, or just the basic formulas to compare the data. All right. Now fifth one is scheduling tools idea. So what is a scheduling tool? Scheduling tool is you have to migrate the data from database to data warehouse. So for migration, you require some schedulers. Let's take a typical banking application. Okay, so in a banking application, the data from the database has to be refreshed in the data warehouse every 1 hour. Okay, or let's take a retail store. The data from retail stores database has to be migrated into data warehouse every at the end of the day. Whereas time bound or real time environments like share market or mutual funds, the information has to be synced into the data warehouse every 5 or 10 minutes. So there should not be any lag. So if you see uh, all these based on the type of application or the requirement, you have to schedule the ETL tool upon the requirement, say 5 minutes or 1 hour or per day, right? So this has to be either manual way or using some tool, right? So, so if you are doing manual way, that's okay. But if you are doing it using some tool, you need a scheduler tool, right? So you cannot every time do a manual intervention. So for that, you will be using some tool. So we have some tools like DAC, Data Warehouse Admin Console, okay, or iTool, which is a small open source tool, and then we got uh, workflow monitor in Informatica itself. So these are few scheduler tools that we got, which we need to have an understanding about them. Okay. Now, last but not least is Unix. So if we talk about Informatica is based on Informatica and Oracle are based on Unix environment. They are on Unix platform. Okay. So if you are doing a manual scheduling, right, you need to have an understanding about Unix commands. All right. Or if you are using SSIS tool, you need to understand how a package. So this is based on Windows, right? It's a Microsoft tool, SSIS is. So for SSIS, it's based on my Windows. So Windows will have packages. So how to run a package, basic run commands. So as part of this training, we will give you a fair idea about all the 6 points that we covered. The basics of database and how the design is done. What is the SQL? How do you read, write, create data in a database using SQL query? And then the knowledge about the tool, which primarily we will be focusing on Informatica, but you need to understand that any of the tool can be learned easily. It's the logic or how the ETL testing that needs to be done has to be understood by you. Tool is secondary. This can be learned in a day or two. So we will be focusing on Informatica. We will try to showcase SSIs as well, but that depends on the time. Okay, but primarily we'll be concentrating on Informatica tool, and then what? Then the basics of Excel. How do you do the data comparison? How do you write VLOOKUPs? How do you merge the data? How do you truncate the data using the Excel? That will be explaining. And then the scheduling tools. Primarily, our focus will be on DAC. Okay, and the basics of Unix commands. So this is what you can expect from the training. All right. And last but not least, the scope of automation in ETL testing. So automation is both the data migration and testing, the performance testing, load testing. These are the primary focus in any of automation needs, right? So why do we call why are we including performance and load testing? Reason being, with large set of data that is being copied from database to data warehouse, it's obvious that you cannot take ages for loading the data or migrating the data, right? So you need to have a powerful tool to copy from source to target. That's where the ETL tools come into picture. But if someone has to quantify or confirm that this tool is copying the data at the speed or the load that the server is taking is good enough to handle, it will not break. So such statistics are obviously in need for the management or the client, right? So all this can be done using the performance testing or load testing. Now from data migration or testing perspective, because you are testing a lot of data manually, it is not that manually it is not a easy job to test millions of records, right? So it is obviously or it is inevitable that you will have to automate the data validation as well. So primarily we will show you using some tools like DVO, data validator, or data validator, or we have other tools like ETL validator, or you can use UFT or Selenium or Python scripting to compare the data. So our focus will be on ETL validator. Okay, we will show you how the tool does, but we will not go in depth of the ETL tool. Actually, the validator tool. Okay, we will show you how it is done using ETL validator. If you are interested, you can do using UFT and Selenium or Python scripting as well. This we will see if we can have if we can include it in the live project. That's sometime down the line. Uh, all right. So this is what on a high level you can expect from this training. So I think I'm done for the day now. So if you got any questions, you can post them. You can raise your hands so that I can unmute you and you can speak as well. Okay, there's a question from Srini. Basically, it's BI is equal to ESI testing. So what is ESI testing? I didn't understand, Srini. Okay, let me unmute you. Yeah, Srini, go ahead.
Sorry, typo error. ETL testing.
Oh, okay, is it ETL? So BI testing is a combination of ETL plus reporting testing as well. Okay, reporting testing. If you would see, the data is coming from multiple tables, right? So you need to combine the data, see in a required format. So you will have to apply filters. Say suppose a sales manager is looking into multiple states of USA. Okay, he want to see only for New York State or New Jersey. So what he or she has to do is he has to filter on this city or states, right? So reporting tools will give those facilities like filters, drilling down, drilled up, or you will apply the other columns where you want to see a combination. So such facility is given by the reporting tools. So generally ETL testing plus reporting testing is what is that desired in the market. The combination of ETL plus reporting is BI testing. Okay.
Yeah, when you see the SQL commands, so mostly the SQL command knowledge of TSQL or developer or DBA, oh, which is the
You mean to say
but
which is the best one that you are saying?
because I see most of the commands of SQL are into the ETL. So, what is the basic knowledge of required for it? Is it a TSQL, Transact SQL, or it be a developer knowledge or a database administration manager knowledge
Okay.
required to learn?
Yeah, right. I got you. So basically, right, you need to understand what is a schema. A schema is the how the database is defined. So what are the tables? How are they related? The primary key, foreign key concepts, the constraints, etc., the max length, etc., that define the schema of the database. So when a data warehouse is created, which means the tables are created and they are related to each other, and the constraints, maximum length, the data types, etc., are defined, right? So which means this is a create SQL query, right? Whereas if you are inserting, modifying, deleting data, these are your transactional queries. These are done using the transactional queries. So that's your TSQL. So primarily from ETL testing perspective, you need to know what these are called as DML. Okay, and these are DQL. So you need to understand or you need to know a knowledge about how do you create tables, alter tables, and as well as the transactional queries, which are the data manipulating DML queries. Okay, and to understand the ETL tool logic, you need to have a fair idea about PLSQL. It is not mandatory that you should know the complete, you should know PLSQL, but it is better to have knowledge about PLSQL as
And there are market like there Oracle SQL,
well.
Microsoft SQL.
Yeah,
Which
so
one?
databases are multiple types. There are multiple vendors in database. Oracle, SQL Server from Microsoft, then you got Teradata, right? So for each tool, you got SQL queries. I mean, see, they look one and the logic wise they are one and the same. There's only simple difference in the syntax. Okay, Oracle SQL, SQL Server SQL. There's a little difference in the syntax. Rest all is the same. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just the syntax. You need not worry that SQL is different and SQL is different. In the
That
training,
is
right? As part of the training, we will try to showcase you the difference between both of them as well. Okay?
DDL. Create SQL is DDL, data definition language.
I'm sorry, TDS. Yeah.
That is data manipulation.
All right.
No, the second one is data manipulation. First one is data definition.
Yeah, I changed it.
Yeah, yeah. Now I can see there was a slow
Oh, okay.
intro.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions, Ready?
No, that's fine.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Swati. You had a question?
Yes, can you provide the also training for ETL tool just like Informatica?
Yeah. So, as part of this training, right, our focus will be on Informatica. Okay.
So you focus on Informatica as well.
Yeah, our focus will be on Informatica only. We will try to
Okay.
have some understanding about SSIS as well, but this is that depends on the time that we have. But primarily,
And what's about Selenium? Because it's different tool.
yeah, Selenium isn't for automation. So that is a separate tool that
Yes,
you will have to take. So when in live,
because everybody asking nowadays, everybody asking for Selenium tools. Do you know automation testings? And then they first raise the question, do you know Selenium?
yeah, right. But that is a separate training that will be handled by the other trainers. But our focus will be on Informatica. Okay.
So you provide the ETL testing training,
Yes,
right?
right.
And who give the Selenium automation testing?
There are other trainers. A team will help you about it. We will ask. I'll ask the team to get back to you about this. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So in Informatica, right, there are four sub tools in it. Okay. Uh, Power Center Designer. This is where the ETL logic has been written, and you got the Workflow Manager where you define the workflows, and the Monitor where you see or where you schedule the workflows that are created. Okay, so as part of this training, we will be concentrating on these subtools.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, Swati?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Vanita. I think you will have to unmute yourself. I did unmute you. Uh, okay, so this training will be on reporting and BI SQL admin. No, this training is about the ETL tool, Informatica, and how do you test using it. uh, how
Awesome.
our typical test cases are written in ETL testing. So that would
Okay, awesome.
okay.
So how long is the training?
This is primarily for 20 days of training.
Okay. And how much is it? Is there a fee or?
Uh, we will discuss. We will send you a note about it. We will have an offline
Okay.
discussion about this. Okay.
Because I'm very interested.
Sure. The team will get back to you regarding this. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's another question here. So, what is the knowledge of what is the how do I map the test planning? How do I write my test planning? Okay, good. All right. So the question here is, how is the test plan different from the traditional testing? But the test plan for testing and ETL testing follow the same format. Okay, but how do you write your test scenarios? What is the environment details, or what are the environment details? The contingency plan, okay, the dependencies. These differ from one application to the other application. Just like in web application testing and the database testing, how the scenarios differ. The same way, even in ETL testing also they differ. But on a high level, the sections or the whatever goes in the test plan document, they are same from the traditional testing as well as ETL testing. As part of this training, we will cover these testing artifacts. So when I say artifacts, it means how do you do the requirement analysis? How does it look? How does a testing requirement and the web application testing requirement document, and how does the ETL testing requirement document looks like? So what's the difference? Okay, and then how do you write the test plan? How do you write test cases? Right? And then when you open defects, how do you do them? So what is that you'll have to write in the defects? So the defect description, right? And then the closure documents. So once the testing is completed, you will have to send a test closure reporting, right? So how do you write those documents? So all this will be covered as part of this training. So okay, so how do you do a requirement analysis? The next question is, so requirement analysis, the way you do for a traditional web application, it's quite different the way you do for ETL testing. So you will have so this we are talking in terms of tables and views, right, in the database. So how do you analyze a table that is being created in the data warehouse? So what are the column dependencies? What is the data type, maximum length? Is there any constraint defined? So this is how you evaluate a requirement on a high level. So as part of this training, we will let you know how to do a requirement analysis for ETL requirements. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So how do we create? Okay. The question here is, how do we create mappings in Informatica? No. As a tester, we don't create mappings in Informatica. It's the developer's job. We read the mappings and the workflows thus created using these mappings. We read them. We understand the logic written in the mapping. Okay. For a simple example, right? I have a source table which has employee details. Okay. Now it has employee ID, the first name, mid name, last name, date of birth. Okay. Whereas in my data warehouse, the table name is changed to W underscore EMP underscore details. And the columns in it are employee ID, full name, and date of birth. Okay. Now, what's in the requirement? They will say that these are the columns that are present in source, and these are the columns that are present in the target. employee ID is a straight copy of whatever is the employee ID in the source table. Whereas full name is a combination of first name, middle name, and last name. Okay, so full name is equal to first name plus mid name plus last name, and date of birth is a straight copy. So when you go and look into the mapping that is created for this target table, you will open it and see whether for this particular column the logic is written like this. So in the mapping they will write it as concatenate. In SQL we have concatenate function. So concatenate first name, mid name, and last name. So this is how the logic will be written. Whereas if you have to test it, you will write an SQL query, select employee ID, comma, first name plus mid name plus last name, comma, date of birth from employee details table. This is on the source query that you will write. This query output should be same as select employee ID, comma, full name, comma, DOB from W underscore EMP underscore details. So if you see, this is how you will be doing your black box testing. Whereas from white box testing, you will open the mapping, you will go and see whether the mapping logic is being written correctly for this particular column, right? So this is what as a tester you will be doing. You will not create a mapping, you will not write any or you will not insert any data. It is done by the developers and the scheduling tool. It's just that you will validate whether the data is same both in the source and target. Got the question? Got the point now? Excellent. All right. Any other questions? Oh, okay. So will you help us in understanding the test estimations? Okay. Estimations. Excellent point. Yes. So estimations are more of the headache of test lead or the test manager. So if you are interested or if you would like to understand, yes, we will be taking a use case at the end of training and will help you in understanding how to do the estimates. Do we have any tools for it? No, no, no. Estimation at this point, we don't have any tools to do it. We generally use Excel based uh, uh, model to develop the estimates. Yes. So at the end of the training, right, once you are familiar with the ETL tool concepts, the testing, how to do the testing, we will showcase you using a use case how to do an estimate. This use case will be used for developing the test artifacts, like whatever we discussed, the test cases, test plan document, how do you open a defects, etc. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So there's another question. What are the defect management tools? tools for ETL. See, you need to understand that for ETL, there is no separate defect management tool. For general testing, whatever are the defect management tools that we use, we will be using them as well. Okay, so we will use HPALM. It was earlier called as QC, or you can use Jira, etc., Bugzilla, etc. Okay. Yes, Srini, you had a question.
Yeah, basically the informatica, regarding the informatica.
Okay.
So what is it and how it is actually?
So, Informatica tool, as I said earlier, is a combination of four subtools. Okay, we have Power Center Designer, where the mappings are created. Okay, this is the one which I'm showing. Okay, and then we got Workflow Manager, where the mappings are created. So, if you see, this is the tool. Repositories, where you will create the definitions for the source and target. Okay, so we will show you how do you connect to your source database, how do you connect to your target database. So how do you configure them? So that is the task of the Informatica admin. But we will show you how to read those. So what is that it is required for us to understand whether the correct repository or whether the correct database has been assigned or not. Okay, and then we got Power Center where designer. This is where the actual mappings or the code is written. Okay, we'll showcase you how do you connect to it, how do you open a mapping, what is that you will have to understand, what are the sections or what are the tabs that you will have to look up to understand the various mappings that are written. How do you relate these mappings? How do you check the relationship between the multiple mappings? And then workflow manager is where the workflows are created. A workflow is a combination of one or more mappings, which means, say, suppose there are tables for employee details. So one table is for employee details, the other table is for employee salary. You package them and then copy the data of these two tables at one go. So that comes with the understanding about the requirement. So you cannot combine an employee details table and a sales target table and load them at one shot. It might happen, but so you are grouping logically. So that logical grouping and definition is given in Workflow Manager. Now you schedule the workflows in the Workflow Monitor. So we said about the tool, right? Scheduling tools, right? So for Informatica in-house, we have this Informatica powerful workflow monitor. This is where you run. So if you see, this has been scheduled for every 1 hour. Okay. So how to test this scheduling part? So the requirement may say that for every 30 minutes the data refresh has to happen. So this is where you will be seeing whether that has been done or not. Okay. So
This
that's
is
about.
basically of sorry.
So the other thing is, once you run the mappings or the workflow, right, you will see the pass and fail status. Now, if any failures are there, you can go and see what is the reason for it. So you can see here whether the mapping has run successfully or not, how many rows have been copied. So if there is any issue, you can go and see why the mapping has failed. So this is both for monitoring as well as scheduling. Okay. Yeah, Srini, you
This
had a
is
question.
it is basically like SSMS or
SSMS, you mean to say SSIS?
all are same SQL Server Management Studio or SQL Server Integration.
Yeah, so SSIS and Informatica are the tools. SSIS is from Microsoft. Informatica is from the other vendor.
So no, I mean to say the tools are same or are there any
No, the
difference between?
tools UI looks different. UI is a bit different, uh, but the way they operate are the same. The logic will be the same. I mean, logic will be written same, but how do you see? It's like this. the Java or the a web application developed by Java using Java or .NET looks like the same, but how it has been packaged or how do you write the code is different, right? The same goes with SSIS and Informatica.
Yeah, when you see here in this one, in this tool, you can also write code and also so performance testing is also done. So there is
Yeah, I mean that's what look and feel. The UI is a bit different to what it is in SSIS. SSIS
which
more
one?
works on package model. Here it is, what do you say, SQL based logical model. This one is.
Most we will be working on most on which tool? So this Informatica.
So in the market, right now, Informatica is the leader. Majority of again, it depends on the what do you say, the client as well. So someone might look for a open source tool. They don't want to spend much. They will go for open source tools like Pervasive. Recently, Oracle also. Sorry, recently some other tool came. I just forgot the name. Okay. Whereas if it's a heavy application, the data is more, then people will go for Informatica. Again, the source system and the target system also matters here. So people are few clients might go with Microsoft tools. So if they are using SQL Server, then they will prefer SSIS because it comes with a package. Till 2020, Oracle has tied up with Informatica. So their contract will end in 2020. Uh, right now, Oracle has come up with their own ETL tool or ODS, Oracle Data Integrator. Okay, that's their own tool. So it depends on what is the source system, what is the target. So there are multiple factors that define what sort of ETL tool we use. But in the market right now, Informatica is the leader.
Does anyone has the cloud also in this tool?
Yeah,
Oracle or
or ODS comes with cloud as well. Informatica also is on cloud. But our training will primarily focus on the commercial Informatica tool.
okay. Any Informatica, any other tools? Only Oracle Informatica so far.
Pervasive is also on cloud. Data stage recently they are going coming on cloud. Others I will have to check. But yes, at this point, uh, our primary focus is on commercial tools.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, team? Okay. Okay, there's a question about SQL. Yes. See, as I said earlier, yes, we'll focus on the basics of SQL and basics of PLSQL. But then again, PLSQL will take a lot of time, so we don't want to lose our focus on the core issue. So our core requirement is ETL testing. PLSQL, yes, we will give a glimpse about it. Okay. So as the next question is about the scheduling tool. Yes. So we'll showcase you what is DAC. How do you use it? All right. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Okay. So there was a question here. As I said earlier, right? What are the best practices? Oh, sorry, I didn't cover this. Okay. So the question here is, so what are the best ways of doing the ETL testing? Okay. So from testing perspective, we will show you some, we will showcase some good practices, good or best practices. How do you analyze the existing mappings? So we all might not be working on a project which is starting from scratch. So we might come in midway where the project has been already developed, mappings are already in place. So you might be working on an existing mapping where a little bit of logic is changed. So how do you understand the entire requirement? So what's the best way to know? So these best practices will be showcased as part of this training. A simple example is, say suppose I have 25 mappings or 25 workflows which use some 100 mappings. I might join in a project such this project where already these mappings are there. So there is a mapping, one mapping change request came. So I'll have to check whether this mapping has an impact on the other mappings as well. So this can be done using the columns that are present in the tables used in the mapping. So this is the best way to find out what are the other mappings that are impacted. Okay. So as a tester, right, what from my experience I learned is you will have to maintain an Excel sheet by release wise. Okay, where it will help you to understand what is the mapping, what are the tables that are impacted because of it. So it looks like this similarly. Workflow name, mapping name, table affected, target table, source table, target columns, source columns, target data type, source data type. So these are typically the columns that or these are the points that we need to have a track every release. So it's like this. So what happens, for example, there is an employee, as we discussed earlier, we had the employee details table where earlier employee ID was char and has a maximum length of 25. Okay, so this is, I'll mention those details here. What is the mapping? What is the corresponding workflow? Now tomorrow it has been changed from char to varchar. The data type has changed from char to varchar. So I'll keep a note of it. So that way I'll know that what was it earlier in the prior release and what is that now. This will help us in understanding what are the tables and columns and what is the source, what are the target columns, what are the source columns that were earlier. Now, because of which we will know what are the mappings that are affected, vice versa. Thus, what are the workflows that are affected. So tomorrow, when one mapping is changed, we can do a requirement analysis by saying that, hey, I see that because of this mapping, the other mappings are also getting affected, right? So that's how your requirement analysis will be made easy. Okay. So such tips or best practices will be discussed during this training. I know for few it would be like some physics or uh, something alien kind of stuff. But as and when the training progresses, you will be understanding all these concepts. All right. Any other questions? All right then. I don't see any other questions from you guys, from you all. Thank you for joining this session. So we'll have another session coming 9th. That would be more about the ETL tool. So we'll show you the ETL tool, and the database we'll be covering is Oracle database. Okay. So we'll showcase you about the tool and about the database as well, and some best practices. And after that, we will start the actual classes, the paid classes. The course will be of 20 days. We will extend as and when it is required. So 20 classes of 1.5 hour duration. Okay. The payment details will be discussed by the team. All right. All right then. Thanks all for joining the session. See you on 9th again. Bye bye.